So I'm Ellie Heath and I'm the VP of Reward at Mambu. So I joined in October of last year. I sit in the people team and it's my role to help us shape and evolve our reward programs at Mambu. So anything across the pay and benefit space that we provide to employees. So this is an interesting story for me. So when I finished my schooling education, I had a place at university to go and study psychology and linguistics, I think. And when it got nearer the time, just didn't feel that my heart was in it. So I decided to defer for a couple of years. And my parents said, that's fine. We support you. But if you're staying at home, you need to start paying rent or board immediately. So I got marched off to the job centre and ended up taking a job in a logistics company. And the logistics company was a large male-dominated warehouse with an office attached. And I had some really awful experiences there. And we had one woman who kind of dabbled a bit in HR, but there was very little support or process or policies to kind of help employees and protect them. And that really made me think about whose role is it to look after the employees and nurture them and be responsible for their well-being. And that took me down a road of researching HR. So I went and studied, kept my options open initially, went and studied a BA in marketing and HR, decided HR was absolutely my passion. So did my MA in HR. And as part of that course, I did a placement during which I rotated around different areas of HR and landed in Reward. So did a project for them, analysing a car allowance that they had in place. And just loved it, loved the impact, strangely loved the risk associated with it and that ability to shape what the company was doing and change and tell a story. So after that, I went into a reward role and nearly 15 years on, haven't looked back. So it really is my passion. I feel very fortunate to have found something that I genuinely enjoy doing. You know, the war for talent is a real impact on reward because we are needing to be increasingly competitive, increasingly innovative in what we do and how we do it, but also just the technological advances. So going from, you know, very paper-based, Excel-based practices through to what software are we using? How can we make our programs more intelligent? Through to things like how does AI potentially influence things like a salary review process and getting a lot smarter in that way. So I think the creativity, the innovation has ramped up and now it is a far more customized situation in each type of environment that you're in. That's where I find the fun of the challenge and the creativity to the point there. You very much need to get into a business, get under the hood of the business and kind of understand, you know, what are our demographics? What's the culture? How do we support that? What do our people want? And, you know, demographics is an important point as well because our wants and needs are changing, even, you know, directly from a benefits perspective. What's important to each person within our organization can vary quite widely. And we never really used to think about that in reward. It also means for me that I can constantly learn. So I think there will never be a day when I say I have finished learning in reward. So I had come from a fairly similar environment and loved the pace and the ability to both create an impact. But I also always love to find a company with purpose, and I like to be able to get fully behind the brand because I think that's when that creates the environment for, you know, that passion to grow and have the best motivation to succeed. So, you know, that was a big factor for me. And then also just great interview conversations, to be quite honest, with people like Charlie, potential peers and other members of the exec team that gave me a great insight also to the Mambu culture, which was another big area for me that I really wanted to make sure that I got right. I mean, I will say the pace is something else, but I was told a lot about how fast things were at Mambu and what was on the table. So I can't say that I wasn't warned about it. I think another interesting thing for me coming in was realizing just quite what a big inflection point we were at or still are at. So, I quickly got a grasp from people in the business that I was talking to that even there was kind of a very different sense of life at Mambu between the people who were fairly new in and those who were slightly longer tenured, albeit even by 6 to 12 months. So I think that has certainly added an extra dynamic for me and has been something that I've been very, very conscious of in terms of what we're doing in Reward and making sure that we're sort of, delivering a consistent message for everyone and one that resonates. So, I mean, I always want the opportunity to learn and grow. I think, you have to be open to that. And so for me, it's a lot about the leadership in a company as well. So do I feel that I can be inspired by my manager? Do I think I will be able to learn and grow from them? And then in my field of work, also more generally, how does that impact across the rest of the leadership team in the company? So is there the appetite and sometimes even the courage to make the decisions and back the things, the changes that need to happen? So without that, as a reward function, you are to some extent disabled. So really, really important. But again, culture is just so key for me to have an environment that is, all of the buzzwords really: supportive, collaborative, safe space is a really big one. I think having that room to grow, that room to sometimes fail, but to have the space to learn from it is really key. There are some really important skills for Reward. And I think, sitting in a people team, really the big one that I think you should never find yourself far away from is empathy. I think also support for others, but remembering that human factor. So the Reward area of work, impacts people's lives. It sometimes extends to their family in terms of the benefits provision. And so it's very personal. And I think it's really important for me to remember that the things that we're doing in Reward impact people personally, and to keep that in mind. And, just in general treatment and collaboration with others, thinking about how I would like to receive the message, or how I would want to be treated or met with on certain situations. So yeah, I think key HR skills, and again, another one, fairness for me is a big thing for Reward. And for me, that's quite a principle and ethic that I've got at heart, but I think it helps for this role to try and balance that picture of fairness in anything that we're doing. I think a lot of learning how to maintain that empathy comes from, having delivered things in the past, listening carefully to the feedback, seeing how things land. I think a lot of it is in the communication for us. And, we really try, and I think we are getting better at it at Mambu. There's been such huge change done very quickly. And I think we are learning we need to explain a bit more about the why we're doing something, not just the what we're doing or what we're changing. And so I think that empathy balance is in that, I am always looking forward. And I have also a balance between making sure that we're creating a really brilliant environment for Mambuvians that makes them feel valued, but also setting things up in a responsible and sustainable way, and keeping an eye on the interests of our shareholders and investors. So, I guess I kind of feel I can take that, have to take that look into the future. And so sometimes there might be something that doesn't feel like it's empathetic, but there is a longer term goal. And I think if we can deliver that with clear communications and empathy and thought around how we do that, then that's really the way that we need to try and get everyone on board with changes. It's important to be responsive as well. And again, to those points around, what's happening in the market, what happens internally, we always need to be responsive in that. But ultimately, my aim is to provide a great reward offering for Mambuvians that does help them feel valued, supported, able to grow within the company. But that balance also, between, well, how do we make sure that we're being responsible? And I think the other factor there, in purpose at Mambu, I also see part of my purpose as being in a leadership capacity. So, trying to lead by example and also support and encourage others to grow within their careers here. It's my job to keep a finger on the pulse externally and to guide and advise leadership, exec team on what I think we need to be doing. But it's also really important that I am responsive to the business and I'm responsive to the direction that our exec team needs to go in or wants to go in. And so I think part of that as well is good stakeholder engagement. So getting input, getting thoughts from others before we push ahead with something to kind of test something out. How do we feel about this? Do we think it would work? Where do we think our gaps are? Taking that into the context of the market, because the market is just one piece and we know that we want to really innovate and differentiate. So do something that's very Mambu versus just mapping externally. And it becomes my role then to persuade and influence our leadership team, other stakeholders, to buy them into what we're doing. And again, to tell that story about why I think we should be doing it and how it's going to help us and hopefully set us up for success. Career-wise, I'm genuinely really excited about the opportunity ahead for Mambu, both for Mambu as a company, but also for what can be done in the reward space. So, I want to be here for that and I want to see it through. But I think more generally, I've never been one of those people who has been comfortable kind of defining a 5 or 10-year plan. I tend to be more fluid and think about where the opportunities come up, what's going on externally, what environment might I like to be in, and again, what kind of culture do I want to be in versus trying to force myself. But hopefully there will be a long time, a good journey ahead with Mambu, and we'll see where it takes me from there. Finding balance is a challenge for me, to be quite honest. I tend to throw myself all in. So the way that I try and sort of reset those boundaries, I think, is to get perspective from time to time. I think perspective is really important, taking that dive out of the day-to-day and thinking about what it is you're doing, where you're impacting. So it's that old saying, isn't it, that we work to live, we don't live to work. And I think another thing that helps me be a bit more disciplined is that, I am very intolerant of the team not having a balance between work and life. So it's something that we talk about quite frequently. And I think really the best way for me to help them do that is to lead by example, right? So I do sometimes need to check myself on that, have a conversation, step back. Took a week off last week, which was just amazing and very restful, and felt that time was really respected. So, I certainly feel us as Mambu saying very strongly, there's a lot to do, but we do need to have a balance. I do feel that I've been very fortunate to find an area that I can be passionate about and really enjoy. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. And so I think if you can find that, then you've hit the jackpot, really, because I just think that helps so much. We spend so much of our time, our lives at work. To get something that you can really feel good about is key. But I think otherwise, I would say the world is your oyster. Be bolder, be strong when you encounter the challenges. Take them head on, but learn from them as well. I think also do your research as far as possible. I have often found myself in an otherwise all male room and have felt that I have had to work that bit harder to persuade and influence. And, I remember one particular scenario at a previous employer where I kind of had this realization that I was in this room with a lot of men and quite honestly didn't know whether to feel proud about that or just utterly horrified. I've had a number of situations where I felt I have been treated differently or unfairly because of my gender, but also because of my age or perceived age in the past, which has also been difficult. And, any kind of unequal treatment really hits the core principles that I have. I find it very hard. And I think ultimately, if there is misalignment between, your ethics and your values and the environment that you're working in, it becomes very difficult to work with purpose. Now, thankfully, the world is changing and we are becoming incredibly intolerant of any unequal treatment, which I think is certainly helping. But my advice on that is to, call out the behaviors when you see them. So probably a very HR thing to do, but challenge them, challenge the organization, your organization, on what's being done to address inequalities. I think as a company, we also need to continue the great work that we're doing in terms of building strong pipelines. So looking at the diversity of the candidates that we're pulling in, where can we grow people? How do we provide a supportive environment? And, this is really important to me from benefits aspect as well. So what are our benefits programs and policies? Are we nurturing different types of people into the company to get that broader perspective? If I think about gender, even at a most basic level, what are our maternity leave policies like? Is that really sending a message to female candidates that this is an environment where you can enter into, grow, flourish, take time out to do what you want to do, but be able to come back as well and almost feel like you've never been away? I think all of those things are really important, and it hits the reward area of work across the board, also from the even an equal pay perspective. And I think also, just on a personal note, and going back to the gender point as well, I think we need to be supportive of each other, lift each other up, encourage each other, because collectively, we have a voice and we are strong and we can thrive. Diversity, equity and inclusion is a really big piece for us across the board. It's core to our strategy, and there is the appetite at Mambu to make it happen and to bring it to life. So yeah, I think we are focusing a lot of our efforts in that space, and there is certainly the support from the whole leadership team to make sure that we are moving forward on that and being the Mambu that we really, really want to be.